Dissociachotic is often seen as a headline of a framework that sort of challenges the very idea of psychosis. So that was where it started. And I think over the years we've kind of talked about that. The real point of dissociachotic is that we can change the way we respond to humans when they're in an altered state. So understanding the framework is important, and deconstructing the mythology of psychosis. And when I say mythology, all I mean by that is it may be true, it may not, but in the absence of any evidence, to continue to accept its truthiness, it's a nice phrase from Amanda, its truthiness kind of belies reality. So when we think about Greek mythology, we don't enact Greek mythology in our daily lives, literally. We might draw from stories of it, we might think about metaphors, we might think about meaning we can develop from it, but we wouldn't say, okay, this is what this Greek mythological character did. So let's take Icarus flying too close to the sun. All right, everyone, fly towards the sun, but don't get too close. And when you do it, make up some wings with feathers and wax and see how you go. And so for me, the kind of mythology of psychosis is a bit the same. I think these people are immorally defunct from the norms of society, a la early 20th century ideas. So that's what it is. So anytime you hear someone who's distressed by altered states or has strongly altered states or beliefs to you, and they come into contact with you, they've definitely got psychosis. And since the beginning of the 20th century, we've kind of developed it into this biological state of mind that is psychosis and dopamine, and simplified it and boiled it down to that's what it is, so everyone follow it. So dissociachotic was about saying, yeah, okay, is there any other ideas that could create a mythology to help us think about psychosis in a different way? So I don't know that dissociachotic is absolute, but psychiatry and mental health services talk about psychosis and schizophrenia as absolute. Well, to talk about either as absolute would be bonkers. So actually, sometimes when people are talking about schizophrenia and psychosis as absolute, from a professional perspective, they're actually being dissociachotic. Because what they're doing is they're saying, what's happening to this person's expression towards me, I don't understand and I'm not comfortable with, therefore I'm going to place between me and them a diagnosis. Dissociachotic's also saying the person who's in an altered state is saying, I don't know whether this person's safe, so I'm going to place between me and them some voices, some visions, some altered states. So actually dissociachotic is pointing to the fact that both the person in an altered state and the other person are sharing non-psychotic states, but legitimate dissociachotic states where they place what's available for them to feel safe with the other between them. Sadly, the mental health system dominates in people's life. So if you get told you've got psychosis and schizophrenia, you very rarely have a chance to dispute that. If you're a voice hearer and you hear voices and you have ideas while you hear voices, if you try and dispute the schizophrenia label, that adds to the perception that you lack insight, you lack judgment, your thinking's not clear, you're distorted in perception. It's all mythology. And perhaps if we could go back to the idea of holding less tightly to an idea, we'd do well. So that's how I kind of understand what I'm thinking about in dissociachotic states. Like, really important, and I always say this, but really, we're not saying people aren't distressed, we're not saying people aren't having different realities to someone else, but that's true in every moment at all times. So my experience of a politician talking is different to your experience of a politician talking, just simply based on our life journeys. And that's the same with altered states. So if you're a person that's found themselves training in mental health, psychiatry, mental health nursing, psychology, whatever, you've got hundreds of years or 100 years of sort of guild-interested developed ideology that supports a profession. So you come into it and you kind of have to buy into it. And so that's how you've drawn on your understanding of psychosis and schizophrenia. Even if you try and do away with that, you underlying, that's what you've been taught, and that's what's been in your intergenerational journey. If you become altered in states, as we call it, or psychotic, or hearing voices, or having unusual realities, you, by the definition, have got more than one experience of it that's not only in the past experiences, but it's now, and you're having to balance that with past experiences. So for me, if I take me, for example, I was brought up in a white, Christian, middle-class society. If you hear voices and you're distressed, then you've got schizophrenia. So part of me making sense of the experiences I had to kind of work through, well, that's my culture, to go to a doctor, to get a diagnosis, to get treated, to get out. But that didn't help. Oh, shit, what do I do with that? So then I've had to kind of go and explore other ideas and add to my kind of experience of being in the world in order to try and find some sense making. So I'm not essentially saying psychiatry is wrong. That's what psychiatry and psychology isn't wrong, but I'm saying it's not accurate to somebody else's experience of living. And I think that's really important. I'm not anti-psychiatry. I'm anti anyone telling somebody else that they know what their perception of the world means. That would be bonkers and weird. So the paper around Dissociachotic was about seeing the non-psychosis we share. Neither position's psychotic, neither position's wrong. But when someone tries to impress onto the other that they have to think like they're thinking and experience the world like they're thinking, it's a lost relational opportunity. It's a lost moment of connection, because I can't experience the world the way you experience the world, and you can't experience it the way I experience it. So better then in Dissociachotic, and that's the bit I want to explain, better then that I take all the lead from you, not from other people that have had it, but when I'm sitting with you, I take the lead from you about how you are in the world and how you experience the world. That's not unusual as a concept, but when it comes to altered states and psychosis, or what I would call dissociachotic states, all the old rules of accepting you as a reasonably intelligent human like me, that goes out the window for some reason. And that's what I wanted Dissociachotic to address. So what I'm saying is, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm in an altered state, I'll put between me and you, because you're a human, you cause me threat. That's where my threats come from, other humans. It's not you, but it's you representing the context of threat. You cause me threat, so I'm going to have to find a way without running away or trying to punch you or trying to do something, because I don't want to be violent, I don't want to hide, I want to be in the world in all that I am, but I'm frightened you're going to do weird things to me. So I'm going to put voices or visions or altered states or strong beliefs that we have to argue about or discuss between us. If you try and get rid of those, I'm going to need to put bigger things in place to stop you coming near me. If you have a relationship with what I'm offering you, then maybe over time I'll realise that you're willing to have a relationship with whatever I've got available in this moment in our relationship. And gradually I might need to have less of those unusual altered states. And I might even, and I think this is important, become curious about you. And if I can feel unthreatened enough to be curious about you, then at that point I'd expect to start seeing much less impact of voices. Maybe the voices move further away, maybe they're quieter, maybe my urgency to get you to believe something about me loses some of its energy and evaporates a bit, because, I think maybe you are interested to learn about me. So then naturally I'll be interested in you. Oh, who is this person that wants to try and hear what I've got to say without changing it, without altering it, without twisting it, without imposing your own story on me? It doesn't mean you give up your own stories. You're allowed to have all your own beliefs and experience of the world. But me, as the altered state person, the dissociachotic person, the psychotic person, I'm also allowed that. And if you can hold yours and I can hold mine without either of us having to change one another, then we can meet each other in new ways, with new curiosities. And I think that's kind of obvious, and it's not what we do. So then you can extrapolate this outside of psychosis and say someone who's in a manic state, as it might be called, someone who's depressed and shut themselves off from the world. Well, what if we spent enough time with them that they became curious about someone who wanted to spend time with them without asking them to do anything? You don't need to get out of bed. You don't need to drink lots of water. You don't need to eat some nutrients. I'm just going to be here with you because you are you as you are. And that's enough for me to be curious, to spend time and be in connection. Well, I might be curious why you do that, because everyone else in my life wants me to eat, wants me to get out of bed, wants me to get a job, wants me to do this and that and the other. So there's something in dissociachotic that I think we haven't articulated well, that no one's mad, no one's psychotic, no one's depressed, no one's bipolar, no one's neurotic. Everyone is just how they are. And if I don't need to put onto you how I think you are, or what you are, or who you are, or how you are, then, and you don't need to try and change me, then I presume we'll find quite a harmony, quite a peaceful space. And what's wonderful, if I'm in an altered state and that happens, I'll start to notice I don't need to be in an altered state. And that's beautiful, that's freeing. Imagine being in a psychiatric hospital where you want to be helped because you're frightened, and you don't have to have symptoms of an illness, but someone else could be curious enough to say, you're this overwhelmed by being in the world, and this fragmented from safety and connection and relationship, that you've come to a psychiatric hospital. You don't need voices to tell me that that's the case. I'll listen to you. If you tell me that, I'll listen. Now, that's not how the system's set up. You have to have an illness. You have to be bad enough. You have to be distressed enough. You have to be overwhelmed enough in order to access a service. It's upside down. It's bonkers. You be mad so you can access a service from me. Oh, you're mad. I think you're too mad to access a service from me. I'm going to take away your freedom now. Oh, no, I didn't want my freedom taken away. I wanted my freedom to come here and ask you for help. Oh, sorry. The way you've expressed that is madness. So that's a little bit dangerous from my perception of the world. And we forget that you actually came to me in the first place to see if I could be a calm, kind, gentle human with you. Yeah, no, I could do that. You don't need to hear voices to come and see me. I could give you some time. So that's what Dissociachotic's trying to express, both in psychosis, because I think that's the kind of chimera, as Eleanor Longden talked about in her TED Talk, that's the chimera of the mental health industry, was the schizophrenic patient. I actually think we've moved so far away from that now. People just have to make up that life's intolerable. Life is hard. They have to find a way to express that to get a service. And people who are less distressed than the acutely overwhelmed 1 or 2%, they've got more bandwidth, if you like, and availability to tell people how distressed they are, so they get a service. So your schizophrenic, for want of better language, doesn't get a service until somebody else has judged that they're in extreme states. In the modern movement, we're making mental health services available everywhere through these Medicare clinics. Well, that'll work for the middle Australia who are finding life tough and who can articulate that. It won't work for the schizophrenic who, if they go there and say what they're really experiencing, because they're in extreme states of distress and disconnection from the world, it won't work for them because they'll get sent to hospital anyway, where we do very few things, most of which are quite hurtful to people. Harmful in many cases, but certainly hurtful. People feel hurt by given drugs that change their sex experience, change their weight, change their cognitive processing, make them look different, because these drugs do make you look different. Your face, your affect changes on certain drugs. And then there's all the problems with that. So that's the kind of overview of psychosis, dissociachotic, I suppose. I guess the theory itself involves quite a lot of sort of other concepts. So I'm a nurse. I think mental health nursing, for the most part, is quite a custodial profession in 2025. I think we do things to people because the doctor tells us to. And that's, some nurses, including the chief nurse, has called me out for this at a conference. Well, she said I was taking the profession back many years by suggesting that mental health nurses are handmaidens. But I think if you go to the psychiatric hospital, they do what the doctor told them to do. So that is by definition a handmaiden. Because I think if you read the codes of conduct and the ethics of the International Council of Nursing Code of Ethics, it's about social justice, it's about choice, it's about human rights, it's about conscientious objection, it's about equity, it's about seeing people as mutual humans. It's a beautiful document. So what is it that means a mental health nurse does what they're told by a doctor that actually would contravene their code of ethics? And if you look on the ARP website, the ICN Code of Conduct is mentioned on there. So I think mental health nursing, for the most part, does those things. I think mental health nursing has 2 or 3 authors in its history who talked about mental health nursing is about human relationship, spending the time to be in human relationship and connection. And in those spaces, people emerge to be more than what I perceived them to be when I came to them when they were distressed. And that's what Dissociachotic is about. I think in Buddhism, it's clear that all things change, all things rise and pass. And actually, no one's experience stays the same. Although we describe it as, I'm like this, I'm still like this, I'm still like this. Actually, we all have different moments within that. But there's almost a need, in order to keep telling someone you're distressed, for it to be consistent and constant. Because otherwise people say, oh, you feeling better now? Good, off you go. Oh, no, I'm feeling a little bit better because I like you. And I wonder whether I could stay here with you. Oh, no, you've had your time now because you're better now. We've got to move on to the really ill people. I think there's a liminality. So I think with people in altered states, they fall between and betwixt the structures of society. And because it's uncomfortable for the world. So we have to have these people sit outside our main structures. You can't have a person sitting in your office hearing voices, chattering to their voices, because it makes everyone else uncomfortable. Well, it makes me uncomfortable when people bring silly mugs to the office and have jokes on. But we don't say that they're not allowed there, right? We kind of have a discussion about it. So for me, people in dissociachotic states always fall between and betwixt the norms and accepted norms of society. So they become liminal. Then they find each other. But even in groups, they find each other. They're not taken seriously by the rest. Whereas other movements have found each other as liminal people, and they've managed to put together a big social media presence, and now they rally the politicians. You don't have that with people in altered states. It's always led by someone else. And so they're liminal people by nature, I would argue, because of the way the world responds to them. Another thing that's very rarely mentioned around people in altered states, dissociachotic, is love. And I think love means different things, and it's a word you can use or not use. But what am I talking about? I'm just talking about people's basic needs to feel valued, desired as a relational experience, believed and engaged where you are, and thought of nicely, thought of softly. We don't think of the schizophrenic in soft terms. We think of it in harsh terms. So if I'm in an altered state and I come to you and I'm experiencing you being scared of me or holding on to stories about me that date back to the early 20th century as an ideology where we are now, I'm not going to experience a lot of love from you. So there's something about, I'm not talking about stigma reduction here because that hasn't worked, that's nonsense in my view. I'm talking about how can we think of you remembering that what the stories you've got about my altered states are yours, and I have my version of the same needs that you have. And that would be about how we might find love between psychotic and non-psychotic people. I could be psychotic, you could be psychotic. Oh, okay, now we've balanced that out. It's like an equation, right? I don't really understand maths, but it's like you have, what are they called, where you have fractions. You have to balance them off. So if we accept that either of us can be in what's called an altered state by someone else, then we can, okay, neutral, good. What other needs do you have as a human? Oh, love, connection? Yeah, I got that. Oh, good, okay, we can do that. as easy. So I think when you go to almost any psychiatric ward in the Western world, I'm sure that some people say, oh no, my psych ward's lovely. Well, the majority that I've been to are pretty unpleasant. Lots of plastic seating, plastic mugs, decaf coffee, slightly shit food, a TV that probably doesn't have a remote. Maybe if you're lucky you have an exercise bike in the corner. No one uses their exercise bikes. Why would you think people in psychiatric wards would want them? It's just not a very nice environment. People smoke and you've incarcerated them, give them somewhere nice to sit and smoke. It's not your judgment that they should stop smoking. You've told them through no offence, they've not committed any offence, they're just distressed and expressing it. You take their freedom away and then create environments that are kind of almost punitive because they're doing what they would have been doing at home if you hadn't removed their freedoms. So don't do weird stuff like that, because you'd expect them then to trust you less, to feel less safe with you, and therefore altered states to emerge more. I don't know what psychosis is. Psychosis, to me, must begin its origin in the eyes of another. So if I hear voices, even whether they're distressing or not, if I hear voices, there is stories in my mind of what that means. Those stories aren't born with me, I don't believe. I don't suddenly at a certain age have an understanding of what's right and wrong in terms of perceptual experience of being in the world. What I do is I gather stories of what's right and wrong according to others. That's everything in our lives, right? Mm. So it's weird that we hone in on psychosis and say, oh, well, that's psychotic. Well, not really. I mean, I would say that paying for gym membership that you almost certainly aren't going to use, because the data would tell you the vast majority of people don't use their gym memberships. But believing you're going to be different and doing it, some people are. Very few people consistently use gym memberships. The vast majority buy gym memberships and use them sometimes for a period of time, stop for a period, go back. Some people buy gym memberships, don't use them, but continue to pay for them because they're worried about cancelling them. Like, these are all verging on psychotic phenomena to me. They're altered states of perception in so much as just cancel it. Doesn't matter. Oh yeah, but I don't want to look like this, or I don't want to do that, or I'm going to use it. Really? You're 8 months in, you're not going to use it. It's unlikely you're going to use it. That's a distorted perception of reality. Now, I know everyone could say, oh yeah, but what about people? I'm not sure that's any different to perceiving that as someone walks past my building, they're walking past and looking in the window and making judgments on me. Because they probably are. Now, how much I get distressed by that and how much I take that story on and carry it on, well, that might equate to different levels of distress and then me expressing thoughts about that. But most people that walk past this building look at it because we've got a big picture on the front. So people look in, right? So then they will make a judgment about us. Hippies, idiots. I wonder what that is. That looks nice. They're all judgments, right? So at what point do I become paranoid as a psychosis that people are paying more attention to me than I think? Well, I presume that relates to my stories of feeling looked at, feeling watched. I'll give you an example. When I started hearing voices in living homeless in a park in Perth, there was 4 cameras. It was before the world of cameras everywhere, so there was just 4 cameras. And I started hearing a voice saying I was being watched by cameras. Well, that's not psychotic. I mean, literally, I was being watched as a homeless person by the 4 cameras. That's why they were there, to manage the itinerant characters who are living in the park, right? So I was being watched. So I was hearing a voice saying I was being watched. Well, okay, I mean, I was interpreting it as a voice, but it quite possibly was a thought. I'm being watched. And maybe having thoughts about being watched is a bit abnormal. So maybe I'm still having those thoughts, but I don't want to have them. Oh, there's a voice telling me I'm being watched. Oh, how did that happen? Maybe when I was a kid, I was being watched and people did harmful things to me. And maybe those 2 stories are then quite simple. So is it psychotic when I'm really vulnerable, sleeping in a park and vulnerable to other people's harm, and there's cameras up there, to me, remembering being harmed as a child when people had to have been watching me to do it, and hearing a voice telling me you're being watched, it's not safe here. Is that psychotic? I mean, it is, because I was distressed by it and overwhelmed by it. It went on for a long time. Is it psychotic? I think so, according to some people's definitions. Is it quite understandable? I would say that's an understandable story. But if you're frightened of psychosis and you're overwhelmed by people hearing voices and having distress around it, and you feel like you need to fix it and it couldn't possibly happen to you, because you're not like that, then I presume you'd say it's psychotic. Did I feel unsafe and need somehow to find a way to feel connected and loved? Yeah, I reckon. Is that psychotic? I don't think so. Which takes me on to the 6 slides I want to talk about. The first part of dissociachotic, so once you understand psychosis, dissociachotic in this way, we might think about, okay, the principle of dissociachotic is about you as the listener. If I'm psychotic, it's about you managing you. Don't worry about me, right? I'm going to do me. You're not going to have much influence on that other than managing yourself. But if you do things to me, as I described, I'm going to become increasingly frightened and overwhelmed. So if you notice your behaviour, rather than looking at my voices, my visions, my tapping, my notes, and looking in the corner to see what's going on, what's going on with my skin, stop it, whatever it is, if you pay attention to that and try and change that, I presume that's going to get worse. If you notice, oh, that's a bit weird, I don't really know what he's doing there, I wonder, I think maybe I should try and stop him. I'll tell him the voices aren't real. Well, that's not going to help me, is it? Because I think they are real. You don't, I do. That's because we've got different stories about this moment in the context of our lives. So attuning to who you are in this moment, in this relationship, is really important, because it allows me to be more free to be who I am and get a sense that you're not going to do things to me. So really noticing how your behaviour impacts on my experience and therefore my behaviour and expression is a big part of this. And are you actually stopping me from not having these altered states? It's not your intention. Your intention is to be kind and loving and be nice to me. But actually, unintentionally, you might be causing me distress. So if you think about psychiatric settings, best example ever, there is a risk that someone will take your freedoms away. I'm fearful of relational threats. You are a psychiatric practitioner, you can take away my freedom and control my life in this moment. You put me in hospital, shackle me to a bed, force me to have a drug I don't want to do, electrocute me, give me ECT, whatever.
For your safety.
For my safety, apparently. It doesn't feel safe to me. So how far can we go in you managing your unsafety about my state of being? And that's the first part of dissociachotic, is noticing, we call it attuning, but noticing, when I do that, when I tap on the table, Matt's voice he gets more vigilant. Well, yeah, because I'm already fearful. I'm already threatened. We can all understand this. If you're anxious and someone starts playing loud music, it can become really irritating really quickly. And you shut up! Well, we wouldn't say that's psychotic. We'd say that's anxiety-based. So if you're sitting in a room and you pick up a pen while I'm talking and I'm telling you about things that I'm scared you're going to do weird things to me, why are you picking up a pen? You're going to write that down? And then I'm paranoid as well as hearing voices. Well, just for now, just don't pick up the pen. Just wait. Like, it's a really simple thing. Don't move around the room without telling me what you're doing. If we're sitting in a room and there's a door and you go and stand in front of the door, that's less safe for me. If I'm already expressing that I'm unsafe, I imagine it'll get worse. So that takes us on to the kind of next bit, which is you can then begin to notice, the more time you spend with someone in an altered state, you can begin to notice the things that you or other people or the environment does that means this person expresses their fear in this way. So whether that's standing near a door, or if you're at home with a loved one or someone you care about in your life and really you're frightened because they're overwhelmed, they're having unusual experiences, notice what your actions are that that then lead to you going, oh, they're psychotic. Because you might be doing some of those things. So a good one is targeted individuals who tell you that beliefs about the world that often other people don't have. They're being followed, they've got a chip in their brain. No, you can't put chips in people's brains, you might say. Well, notice what happens when you say that to a TI, because they'll distance themselves off for you, or they'll start trying to convince you. Well, if you start to attune to what you're doing and notice these experiences, then both in this moment, you'll notice, I had a part to play in that, the exacerbation of that distress and that expression. But you might also start to see when that person goes out into public, all these stimulations that join in with their experience of the world, they don't want to go outside anymore. So then you start to notice, that happens in my relationship with this person, and it happens as a common thing in all their relationships. Oh, okay. Well, I don't need to try and stop it because I can't, but I might have a lot more love and compassion for this person, noticing that the world, at every moment, is creating fear for them. And I do that in this relationship. I wonder what it'd be like if they had one relationship where that didn't happen. A little bit of asylum, we might say, a shelter, a freedom from the storm. And I think that's a really key part of Dissociachotic. So we attune and notice what we're doing in the relationship. Then we begin to notice and get a right understanding of what the threats were in this relationship, but also what the threats are that are mimicked in the world around them. Because that's when people get detained, when they go out and have to do something and they're frightened. What about if you go to the supermarket and you think someone's watching you and putting poison in every piece of food you pick up? Well, you're not going to convince someone that's not happening. You can give them all the drugs you want in the world. Those things don't go away for most people. But you could give someone time to talk that through and see if that can calm a bit so they can go and have a different experience in the shop. That would be beautiful for a person who's fearful. One of the things we do then in mental health and in families and in all contexts around people in altered states is the moment someone looks a bit calmer, we then start asking them questions. We then start trying to fix things. We then start trying to change things. We then get them to do tasks. In the principle of Dissociachotic would say that if a person has started to be curious about you, started to be in a relationship with you, start to feel love, connection, compassion, kindness, not having to prove themselves, not having you interpret my reality, if I start to feel slightly calmer and then you start doing that to me, I'm going to feel foolish, I'm going to feel tricked, I'm going to feel that you were doing something to me to make me do that. So that's a kind of no-no for me, and that's what we see a lot in families and environments is the moment someone's calm, we're right, back to task, let's get on with it. In Dissociachotic, we're talking about facilitating someone telling us when they're ready to do it. It's not great productivity in capitalism. It doesn't work terribly well, but actually it does work well if you give the time, because if someone is consistently able to say, we've been sat here for an hour now, and I know I came here to fill in some housing forms. Could we do that now? Could we have a look at that? Now I'm a bit nervous. Instead of the moment I'm calm, you say, right, let's get the housing forms out, Matt. Oh, is that all you got me here for? Is that all you wanted, was to get the task done so you can get me out of here? And then I start to get a bit paranoid and go, fuck, she's another one that's doing that to me. So facilitating an environment where the person can begin to come to us and ask us to help them with their needs is really, really important. Almost every task you've got, if you really believe in psychosis and people being sick and distressed, almost every task you've got can wait. Because you don't really believe they're a full, equal human anyway in that moment. So may as well wait and let them come to you. If you don't, you risk pushing them away again, back into that liminal space. Oh, you can't perform as I need to fill in this form. Oh, fuck, right. Oh, there's that voice again. Oh, why is she saying that? Is the door locked? I don't know. And suddenly you've lost me again. We've lost in connection. So we're going to have to keep going back to that. So facilitating a person when they're feeling more able to come into relationship in a variety of ways, which I would say are non-psychotic ways in the psychosis ideology, but basically having general interactions as humans, eye contact, verbally, maybe holding hands, maybe sitting closer to each other, maybe walking together, doing things that are in relationship. Don't suddenly jump on someone and ask them to perform tasks because they've only just this moment come into this connection. So let them come towards us. Otherwise, we're just doing what I talked about at the start. We're sending them back into psychosis. And then we say, oh yeah, they're still not able to cope. Well, yeah, not because you promised them you weren't going to do that. So they could cope if you hadn't said that.
And you don't have a lot of opportunity to redeem yourself, do you? Because people are smart.
Absolutely. It's like if you think about a cat, you know, like a cat, if you wind a cat up and it tries to nip you, you probably can't then just cuddle it really tight because it's still fearful, right? This is the same with humans, all humans. So we move on to the idea of the coexisting same experience, which is a massive part of this model for me, is that we can have two different experiences of the same moment. We will, by definition, this interview, this discussion, me talking about dissociachotic, what I'm saying is almost irrelevant to you because you'll be interpreting it how you hear it. So we're trying to find some shared reality, some coexisting reality of this moment. But if someone asked both of us after this what I talked about, we'd tell them two different stories, and then they'd have another different story. So the coexisting same experience is not about having the same experience, but having the same moment shared and coexisting, and being able to recognise we're having different experiences in this moment, but broadly trying to be in the space while we have them. And that facilitates a person not being marginalised and betwixt and between. Not saying I'm right, not saying you're right, not saying the third person's right, but we're also not saying anyone's wrong. So we could probably all sit in here, and at times we might even acknowledge that we've got different experiences. Can you hear my voices? No? Oh, okay. You know, that might be okay. You don't have to say, I can hear your voices, Matt, because you can't hear my voices. They're my voices. I hear them in my head. How can you hear them? That would be bonkers. Then I don't believe you. Then I'm paranoid if you're a mental health professional because you've got all this insight and wisdom. Well, not really. You're just saying things that aren't true. That would be weird. So the coexisting same experience is about being able to sit in an experience together and coexist and beginning to acknowledge that neither of us have to be liminal, even though we have different experiences of this moment, which is inevitable. The mental health system says there's common ways of being, and they're the right ways. So we need to get everyone back to that through medication, through talk therapy, through ECT, through hospital admissions, through being nice to your family and friends, through being right to your partner, through all those things. They're all bullshit. Because even if we agree to them, people have different experiences of that. So that's just life. And that's where dissociachotic for me is really powerful, is that it invites us, if you do workshops around this and try and get into this, it invites you to remember that any one of us is coexisting always. But the brave thing to do is to begin to acknowledge that. And that will build connection and relationship. So the next point then is about being with people rather than doing to, and there's an important nod to Lauren Mosher's work and phrases around this. But once we've discovered a coexisting experience where two of us are sitting together, being together with different but shared moments of the same reality, the same being, then increasingly people's altered states will evaporate. Increasingly we can come into relation. Oh, so you can't hear my voices, but I can, but you accept that I'm hearing them. Maybe I can accept you can't hear them. Oh, okay. If there's no energy that one of us is right and wrong, if there's no push for one of us to be the correct and the other to be wrong, the mythology to be absolute rather than distorted, oh, well, I don't mind what you think, really. I don't have an issue with that. And the psychotic person, in my fantasy, actually becomes extraordinarily giving and kind and loving to the other through the ability to not judge you for your thoughts. But if you're threatening me by saying my voices aren't real because they're not real to you, then I can't find that connection. But if we can come into this relation and be with each other in such a way where neither of us has to be correct, neither of us has to be believed or unbelieved, let's say, neither of us is being labelled in one way or another, we're just having two different experiences at this moment. Oh, that's really beautiful, and I can really love you for that, because that might be the first time that's happened in my whole life around my voices. So now I'm loving you, and I presume if I'm feeling loving to you, it's easier for you to feel loving to me. So this is the dichotomy of dissociachotic. If I'm feeling threatened by you, we're not going to find connection. If you can hold space for me and manage your own behaviour, we can be with each other, and I'm inevitably going to also be really curious and really interconnected with you, even though we're acknowledging we're in a different space. And that's the point about this. You can't be in the same space. It'd be psychotic to think we could have the same experience. How could we have the same experience? So what about that? Well, the point of that is that really that's the goal. We're trying to get to connection where I can have my experience, you can have yours, and we can begin to then share that we're noticing that and how that's deepened our sense of being together. And if I'm starting to feel now that, you are not going to do weird things, you're not going to turn on me, you're not going to try and convince someone about me, you're not going to send me to hospital, you're not going to suggest a tablet for a very common human experience. Or indeed I might say to you, do you know where I could get some tablets? I'm really scared about it, but I'm really frightened at night and I could really do with something. Like, it's not about bloody tablets, but letting people say what they need. And actually, what we're then going to have is people telling us the narratives and the stories of their life that often they've never told. When I was in London last year, we were in acute psychiatric hospitals, me and Amanda, acute assessment centres. I would literally sit down with someone and say, I'm not going to speak for an hour. If there's ever a story you've not been able to tell in here or in any setting like this, psychiatric setting, I'm not going to do a risk assessment. I'm just going to listen to you. People would tell us stories and say, in 15 years of psychiatric, I've never been able to tell that story. I've never felt safe to tell that story. That's not me being amazing. It's literally me being open to that person being the only person that knows this story. So then we're really, dissociachotic is just about creating the conditions in which someone can share a story. And for the very first time, often hear it themselves. And hear that from a person who, I'm not sitting here fearful that you're going to turn on me when I tell that story. Because if I'm frightened you're going to do something weird to me, I won't even have the space within myself to hear the story of myself, let alone say it outside my mind to someone else. So that's what dissociachotic is all about, is creating the context and environment and conditions where we just meet as two people. Just meet as two people. We can have our roles, that's fine. But we meet as two people and see if we can get to a point where a more, useful or meaningful dialogue can occur that gives me the experience of the possibility of that occurring in my life. So, oh my goodness, I can do this. I can have this relationship and hear these stories and then make sense of why I haven't been able to do that when I've always felt threatened in relationship. And that's dissociachotic. So there's an inherent wisdom in the dissociachotic state, in the person who's expressing that dissociachotic state. And it's a curious thing to me that the mental health industry reads books about people and watches videos about people and does research on people and takes advice from social media about people when it's got nothing to do really with the person they're meeting. It's just building a narrative in the mental health professionals' noise that actually gets in the way of being in human relationship and allowing the so-called psychotic person to not be in that state and to become powerful in their experience. And I think that's really the guts and essence of dissociation.